Hello, my name is Angela Sanchez, and I am an LLM student at Penn State Law. I am currently in the Manglona Lab for Gender and Economic Equity. For the lab's Witnesses to Her Story project, we are capturing the personal experiences of women with a focus on their participation in education, sports, and the workforce during a dynamic area in the United States. Today, I have the privilege of interviewing again Dr. Barbara Farmer, a long life educator, glass ceiling breaker, mother of three, and the first African American woman to become a principal in the State College Area School District. Welcome again, Dr. Farmer. So, Dr. Farmer, I would like to go back to your first teaching job in Virginia. What year was this? Do you remember?
I'm sorry, what was the last thing you said?
What year was your first teaching job when you were in Virginia?
1967?
1967. And at the time, were you married
I was
already?
not. I was engaged
Okay.
to be
And
married at the end of that school year in June.
okay, good. So, Dr. Farmer, do you remember how you got paid the first time you were there?
How I got paid or what I got paid? I,
How?
they had a system of, uh, that's a pretty good question. I'm pretty sure it was it was put into our an account at the bank where we could get access to. If I'm not mistaken, that was the case.
So you were having your own bank account
Yeah.
as a single woman in
Uh-huh.
1967?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Okay. So you were the only holder of that account?
yes.
Okay, good. And then after you got married for your next jobs, do you remember how you got paid then?
Each time we have been paid through an account where they would put the money into our checking account
Okay,
for the
so
jobs that I've had. Yeah.
at the time you were married, were you able to keep your individual bank account or you needed to make a new one with your husband?
Both. I
Both?
kept the one I had. Yeah, and then a joint account with him. That first year teaching, I taught in Campbell County, Virginia, and the pay was $5,000 a year.
Okay.
And and so it was placed into a checking account that we would get like the stub or something at the end of the month. We only got paid once a month, and it seemed to be that was the norm, so there wasn't any reason to question that or challenge it. After that, I went to back to my hometown of Newport News, Virginia, and I got a job in the Hampton City Public Schools, which is it's sort of like State College and Boalsburg when you're on the same road and you just ride from one to the next.
Mhm.
And that salary I think was like $11,000 maybe a year. And I stayed there for several years. So, uh, and you sort of get, and the interesting part was even when I was hired there, you could tell that there was a small number of African American teachers at that building, and they were trying to increase those numbers. And in that particular year, uh, I was one of I think two that they brought in out of maybe 10 or 12 teachers, and so that's pretty much how that worked. And we knew the rules of segregation, even though it was in the time of when schools were to be integrated. But we also, as Black people, we understood how that the rules for making that happen work. So even though it was maybe out of 100, 110 teachers, I think maybe a dozen of us were Black.
And
And,
when
and I think most of us in that dozen were female, I think.
Okay, so when you talk to me about the rules of segregation in that school that was integrated, can you be a little bit more specific for the young people that don't know what segregation looked like in real life?
Wow. If you'll let me, I'll go back to the first job.
Sure thing.
Excuse me. It was a predominantly black high school. And in that setting, I think we had 3 or 4 white teachers. And all of the other teachers were black, and all of the students were black. And I thought, wow, this is reversed for us because normally we would be in the minority. And those people were, the white teachers were okay. They were flexible. They were communicative. But I often you sense a sense of not being very comfortable because they were outnumbered on all levels. The administration, from everything but them. And then when I came to Hampton, the school that I taught at there was a predominantly white high school trying to integrate through personnel. And it was an interesting situation because one of the things, I don't know if this will fit where we're headed, but there's a sense in minorities of knowing why we're brought to a place and how and why we're being treated the way we're being treated. One time in that building, I didn't have any trouble, maybe with one student out of all the classes that I had, because I was in charge of the pep club and different things like that that involved spending time with the kids outside of class. And because that young man was so disrespectful and would not do his work because I was a black teacher asking it of him, he did not graduate because he had no grades in my roll book for me to use to pass him. And that's the only time I can remember ever having a student fail any of my classes through all the years that I was a high school teacher or a college professor.
At the time that it was towards the end of the 60s, the 70s, was it common for a female black teacher to be teaching white young men?
Yes, they were included in the classroom setting. So you didn't get a sense that they pulled them out. But this young man was just adamant about disrespecting and disobeying that which I asked of him. And when you don't pass him your assignment, a 0 goes in the roll book. And when you have to add those up to come up with a grade, he didn't have a grade to pass. So I've not seen him since, don't know a thing about him. But just as the old black people said, just as I was as stiff as he was stout. Meaning, if you want to do it that way, and this is the way it's done to get out of here, then it's okay. You may do it your way, but you can't impact the way I do. And I must say, though, that administration stood with me on that. And that was a nice shock because that's not always true. But I stayed in that building for approximately 3 or 4 years.
And your administrators were white?
I'm sorry?
Your administrators were white?
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you a quick story. You want to hear a story about that?
Sure thing.
One day I was walking down the hall and the principal came out. He said, do you teach French? I said, no. He said, do you teach? And he asked me about several different foreign subjects. And finally he got frustrated because I didn't help him. I figured if you hired me, you should know what I teach. And finally I said, the school's girls guidance counselor came out. She said, no, she's not. She teaches here. That's you hired her. And I looked at him. I said, finally, I teach business education. And I walked away because he made it clear that he was not trying to create a relationship with me. He just needed to know something that would help his numbers that particular day. And I wasn't insolent or any of those things to be, acting kind. I just answered his questions. Yeah. And the observations by teachers, by administrators of our classes to give us our rating for the year. In that administrative group, there was one black assistant principal. And there was another guy, a white assistant principal. And we had our teacher observations in the classrooms by our supervisors from central office and in the building. And all of mine were outstanding. And when the white assistant principal came to observe me, we met for my meeting, for the observation meeting, and he gave me a satisfactory. Well, my insides just couldn't cope with that. So I asked him, I said, toward the end, he said, do you have any questions? I said, I do. I said, what was your major? What did you teach? He said, biology. I said, Mr. Gray, if all of the supervisors and the specialists in business ed say I'm an outstanding teacher, how can you as a biology teacher say I'm satisfactory? He chuckled. He said, I just wanted to see how much it meant to you. So had I not challenged him, I would have gotten a satisfactory on my observation. So stuff like that.
Okay. So what about the facilities? Were they segregated as well, like the bathrooms, cafeteria?
Yeah. But we had to be supportive of the Black kids there as well, because sometimes the athletes were treated well. The Black athletes were treated well because they were helping them to win state championships. But some of the other kids, you could tell that they were kind of disenfranchised. So I worked with the pep club, and a lot of them were in that. So I got to know them personally, and they would come to find me during the school day if something unpleasant had happened, and I would just sort of console them and help them to make sense out of what was going on. And then my husband started teaching in the district at another high school, and we were and then when it was time for like the prom and different special activities, my husband and I would dress students who said they couldn't afford to go. So I established a real close bond with the Black students there, and with the white ones too, because I treated them all fairly. And so the kids would find me at my lunch hour during the course at the end of the day Miss Webb, I need to talk to you. We need to talk. We need to talk. And I said, okay, what does that mean? And if something had disturbed them through the day and they felt they were not treated fairly, I could sort of help them to understand and see the situation in which they were coming to school and operating.
Sounds great. So at that time, you were already married and you
Yes.
were receiving, I want to go back to your income in that account. I guess at that time, you didn't have any credit cards.
No.
And how were you able to get money from that account? Like the money that you earn, for example.
You write a check or you go to the bank and take out enough cash to last you for the week.
And in that account that you had together with your husband, were you able to get the money by yourself or you needed him as well every single time you needed money?
Oh no, I was able to get that by myself. It was a joint account.
And do you remember the first time you got a credit card or a debit card?
Kind of, I guess. Yeah,
Was it around that time or a little bit later in life?
a little bit later,
Okay, sounds
because
great.
I didn't have a need for one. And then you reach a point where, well, I work, so maybe I ought to have one of these too.
So I know this is a little bit back in time, but do you remember how was the process of getting your first card?
My first car,
Yeah.
my husband and I did that together.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't ever remember when I was at home, my father made a car available to me. And when I was getting married, that was one of the things that my husband wanted to make sure that I had continued use of in my life was a car. So the first car that was selected didn't grab me. And when I expressed that to my husband, he said, okay. And he took that one back and we went and picked out one that we both liked a lot. And that was it. Yeah.
Was it common at that time for women to be driving?
Oh, yeah. I was driving in high school. My father reached a point where he could not drive. And my mother reached a point she liked having a chauffeur. So I think I got my license at 16, 15, 16. And I became the chauffeur for my mom and dad and for anything I needed. And that was a real blessing for me. I don't know if this is going over here on this path, but at that time we had the city buses, but there was a sense of knowing, quote, where you were supposed to sit. And that never set with me. So I never really had to ride the city bus. My daddy said, baby, don't worry about that. And he kept, every couple of years, my daddy got a new car for us. And one time when there were 6 of us children, he had 4 or 5 cars at one time.
Oh my goodness.
because it was something my parents came from South Carolina, and my daddy and mom were what's the word I use after? They were tenant farmers. So they worked the land for a white person and did their shopping from the white person's store. And my daddy said there were months he didn't make an extra $5. By the time he paid everything he owed to the owner of the property and all of that, the people he worked for, he said there were times he got nothing, because after you pay your bills to them, the money that they then. So when he moved to Newport News, he was determined we were going to have a nice place to live, a car to ride, and to be able to do the things we wanted to do. So that's what he provided.
That's a fantastic.
And I'm the youngest of 6 children. So my brother said I got the better part of life.
So I want to go a little bit further in time. So after you were working in Newport, you then had your first son.
I worked in Hampton. Hampton is right next to Newport News.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's right. You have your first son.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember how you found out you were pregnant?
Oh my goodness. My husband told me.
Your husband told you? How did he know?
My husband told me first. He I don't know, one day we were getting ready for bed or something, and he said, "You look like you're getting thicker." And he said, "Are you pregnant?" I said, "No, I'm not pregnant." And he said, "Oh, well, you may want to check on that." And at that time, one of my sister-in-laws had a female gynecologist.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, I would prefer that, because I never had, I didn't want a male doctor. So when I went to the doctor, after she examined me, she tapped me on my foot. She said, "Yeah, baby, you're going to have a baby in about so many months." I said, "Really?" And I was really surprised. I didn't think I was pregnant. I didn't know I was pregnant. And my husband had just returned from Vietnam. So I just assumed that when I didn't know I was pregnant, it was out of excitement that he was now back home and we could start our regular life together. So that's how I found out.
Was it common to have female doctors at the time?
There weren't a lot of them, no. And it wasn't common to have Black doctors who could facilitate your services as a Black person at the white hospital. They weren't allowed to do certain kinds of things in those hospitals. And there was one Black hospital, Whitaker Memorial Hospital, for Black people. And when I went to the white female gynecologist, I had to go where she practiced. And of course, she practiced in the white hospital, Riverside. So when it was time for me to have the baby, that's where I met her, at the Riverside Hospital. And got treated very well, because apparently she had quite a reputation for taking care of her patients. And I thought, oh, okay, so I was treated pretty well.
So this was for your first pregnancy, and you said you were treated really well. Do you remember how many times were you going to visit her?
In the beginning, maybe every 2 months. And then the closer I got to the end, once a month.
And you had the baby in the hospital where she was like working?
Yes.
And how was that process? Was she there? Were there other attendings, nurses around?
They were they were rather kind to me because of who she was, I do believe.
Okay.
When I went in, uh, I was not very calm, I don't think. And one of the nurses told me the next day, she said, "Oh, you gave him a fit downstairs last night." I said, "I did?" Because I didn't remember. She said, "Oh, yeah, you did." She said, "But we took care of it." I thought, "Oh, okay, that's good." But they put me to sleep. So after that, I was just waiting and, for things to happen.
So
But they did treat me well. And when she came in there, the acting physician came in there, she was very on top of how I felt, how I was being treated, and what I needed.
So you said they put you to sleep. Did you had a C-section with your first baby?
With your first baby, they tell me this doctor would give you the medication. So you, of course, you have to be in labor long enough for it's time to push. But when it got to that, she would give you medication as with your first baby, so that the pain and it put you to sleep.
Okay, interesting. And you kept the same doctor for all your pregnancies, or you needed to change?
Oh no, we moved.
Mm-hmm.
When he was 3 years old, 1974, we moved to Penn State for him to go to graduate school to get his doctorate. And I had a second son here. And my doctors were white. Even and the pediatrician I think was Asian.
Were they male or female at the time?
So they were male.
Okay.
Because my desire then was just to have the best doctor uh, who would treat me right. And there was a small black population here. Had started a church, and some were students. So I was able to get some sort of recommendations from the ladies in that group who already had children here. So, and then after I had him, uh, yeah, there weren't any black doctors.
And did you see any difference of care?
Did I see any difference of care?
Or did you feel differently being treated by two different doctors?
It was interesting because I had to feel like I had enough time to assess their treatment of me throughout the months of going to their offices.
Mhm.
And so I was pretty much okay, I think. After I had the baby, that I was very into trying to find the best pediatrician who would take care of my baby.
And was that easy to do to find a good pet here?
Again, through recommendations of some of the members of the church that we were a part of. Yeah.
And were you able to find them in town or you needed to go somewhere around?
In town, in town. And I also, you need to know this about me. If I don't feel like I'm being treated well, I make it known. I let them know. I said, if my being black is a problem for you, let me know, and I'll find someone that it isn't a problem for. No, 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 it's not a problem. I said, I just need to know because if I notice anything, then I would bring that to their attention, and they would apologize and say maybe it was the nurses or whatever something. But I've been really blessed to be able to speak to how I feel I'm being treated.
Well, clearly you were advocating for yourself and for your loved ones. Uh,
Absolutely.
do you remember a particular situation in which you felt the urge to advocate for yourself in a medical setting?
During the baby having time or since I've been here?
Anytime.
Oh, okay. I had a situation one day, and it was with the doctor's PA. The doctor was fine, but she was coming in and doing the preliminary stuff. And I was on the phone. Well, I was sitting in the office waiting for her for about 15 minutes. So my daughter called me and I was responding. And she came and she said, well, if you're going to be on the phone, then I could go somewhere else and do something else. So I said, hold up a minute. So I hung up. I said, let me help you. You have been on the verge of several isms here with me today: racism, ageism. And I listed everything I could think of that her behavior was shocking. I said, but I'm going to do you a favor. I have adult children who work in the workplace. I'm not going to tell the doctor how you behave, but if you treat me like that again, he will hear about your behavior. But I'm going to be kind to you today because somebody else, black even, who is not as tolerant as I am, may not have been as kind to you as I'm being right now. But don't you ever do that to me again. And she didn't. So I've discovered, my mother used to teach me as I was growing up, there's a way to do and say anything. And I believe that. And if I feel that people are not treating me fairly, I let them know.
So this was a really recent experience.
Oh, last 10 years, maybe, something like that. Within the last maybe 5 to 10 years. Yeah, something like that.
So if we were to put like a framework of time, you live segregation and you have experienced 10 years ago what you consider was racism. How are things in the middle of those years in terms of integration, discrimination? Do you think we are advancing as a society? Do you think some things were better before, some things are better now?
I would have to say and think that some things are better, and then there are lots of things that are no different. But I think for me, and the reason I say that, I don't know if you are aware about the Renaissance Scholarship. Okay, that was a resounding response from my husband and myself in terms of how we have orchestrated our presence in this community.
So tell for the audience a little bit more about that.
The Renaissance?
Mhm.
Oh my goodness, it's been one of the most, I thought having a baby was overwhelming. But then it has been one of the most overwhelming and wonderfully blessed experiences in our lives. Penn State has a Renaissance scholarship that they honors people in the community with each year. And I knew about it, but I think in all the years they've done it, I think there's been one other black family. I think it's one. And yeah, and it's like when we received word that we were being honored last year, it's like I didn't believe it at first. I thought they were asking us to help select the person being to be honored. And the person, no, they're honoring you and your husband. That was one of the most mind blowing and wonderful experiences. And we have been blessed throughout. We've been married for 55 years, and we have had a lot of wonderful things happen to us through our work life, our community service life, our church life, things like that. But that was another level. And even in the midst of the things that they observed us throughout our time here, uh, if at any time I felt that I was not being treated well as a person or as a woman, I made it known. And I would sit to the point sometimes people would, if things were going on and people weren't treating people right, people would turn to me, Barbara, would you say something, please? I said, just give me time. Just give me some time to see what people are doing and talking about. And after I listened, I believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt. I said, but what you just said, it won't work here. It's not fair. It's not right. And there's no reason for you to be unkind and try to destroy somebody else. So that has been instilled in me, I think, since I was a kid. That you don't walk over people, you don't let them walk over you, and you don't let them just say anything. Uh, One of my favorite statements whenever I'm involved, and of course here everything I'm involved in is integrated. But one of the statements, if someone calls me up to respond or give a message or a speech, one of the things I ask is, I tell people, I have a question for you. And the question is, what happens when you walk into the room? And it's been the most interesting response because people said, I never thought about it like that, Barbara. I said, but you should. Because your presence, and I've told this, my presence is your present. The way I treat you is a gift. And if people are not doing that, then I'm not the person for you to be involved in this particular activity that you're asking me to be involved in. And I can say no. And I have said no to things. And even I just believe in fairness and treating people right and doing the right thing, the right, good, best thing.
Good. So now here we are in State College. It's like the late 70s, early 80s, and you have three kids.
Oh, no. We came here with one in 74.
And then you have the two others here.
Mm-mm.
No, just
In
one.
1996, I had a second son here.
Mm-hmm.
It was, to tell you a quick funny story. I was in the hospital And I was standing at the nursery looking through the glass at my child. And a white lady walked up to me and she said, "Which one is yours?" I thought, I don't think she's trying to be unkind. And I looked at her and smiled. I said, I think I asked, "Which one would you think?" And I said, "No, no, no. See the one over there that has my complexion? That's mine." I thought that was so, I don't know if she was trying to be super fair and not just assume, but I said, no, no, no. That's my baby over there. That little brown boy right there, that's mine. So then we left here in 77. And my husband went to Temple University to teach. He's a professor there. We left there after, I think, 2 years and moved to Greensboro, North Carolina, where he taught at North Carolina A&T State University. And when I got to Greensboro, I was pregnant. Okay, in the moving and the shifting and everything. So
how did you find out about
being
that?
pregnant? Well, the body gives us some signs. And again, I just attributed it to the fact that we had sold our house in New Jersey and we had decided to move to another state and just so much going on in our lives. I just wasn't paying any attention to myself in that way. And then again, you start getting a little thicker around the waist. And I said, something's not right. So I found a doctor there, and that's when I discovered I was pregnant.
So were you able at the time to get a pregnancy test in a pharmacy?
If they weren't advertising them.
Okay. And you needed to go to the doctor to confirm.
Absolutely.
And how was this experience for your third pregnancy? Different states, different doctors, different kids?
North Carolina A&T is a HBCU, historically black college. And there were plenty of people there who would direct me to a black physician. And where we bought our home in Greensboro, the next door neighbor was a pediatrician. So he was very helpful in guiding me to, finding professional care.
So you didn't find any more female doctors?
No.
In your first one?
And I was so grateful. I felt really blessed to have the female doctor for the first time because I'm the youngest in my family. And my sister had four boys, and my sister-in-laws were having children. When my first brother married, I think I was 9. So having a baby was just a scary thought to me, period. Anyway, I just thought, whoa, I don't know. So so they kind of took care of me through the years and helped me to understand what I needed to do for myself and things like that.
Good. Awesome. So how did you decide to stay at home with your babies?
When you have 3 of them?
Well, since the beginning, and then with 2 and then 3.
With the first one, I stayed home that first year. And then I went back to it because we were still in Hampton, Newport News area, and my mother babysat him. Then when I had the second one up here, I stayed home because I didn't have anybody to babysit, and I wasn't going to entrust him with just anybody. And then when we moved to Greensboro, I worked during the pregnancy. And after I had Becky, our daughter, Rebecca, I worked a little bit, but she wasn't happy at the sitter, and it was a black sitter. But every time I would leave her in the morning, she would just cry and scream. And it was hard for me to leave her because she was my only girl, too. I had 2 boys, and now I had a girl. So finally, I told her daddy one day, I said, I want to teach her what I want her to know about Christianity, about the Lord, about family, about life. And I'm coming home. So I came back home for working. I was the administrative assistant to the president of the Black Bank in Greensboro. Really nice people and everything. But it hit me. I had been home with her brothers, and I wanted to give her the same opportunity. So I stayed home with her for a while.
So if you ever needed to leave the house for anything personal that you couldn't take your kids with you, who was taking care of them?
Their daddy.
Okay.
If it was during the workday for him, because he was a professor now, so He didn't have classes all day, every day. And some of his classes like were in the evening at night. So if I had something like that to do, then he would accommodate me by coming home and keeping the kids so I could go. Because remember, we've moved a lot. So we've had to really stand stiff behind each other in terms of the things we've had to do for work and family.
How did he feel having the babies at home?
He loved it. He loves being a daddy, and they are 43, 48, and 52, and he still loves being a daddy. He has the best time with them and the grandchildren. So, and I think too that was his way of letting me know he appreciated the sacrifice of our moving so many times, and that each time we moved, because see, we came from Virginia where we both had family who could have helped take care of our children if had we stayed there. But I think that was a part of his way of letting me know that he realized moving was not the easiest thing. And that was his way of supporting our family during those times.
That is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
What about other chores around the house? Did you ever discuss who was taking care of them? Was it a given? Any assumptions?
That I would be the caretaker at home for everything.
Yeah, like the chores around the house, like who was doing the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry.
Well, because I didn't work outside the home, doing those things didn't seem cumbersome to me. It was natural. And I used to sew. So when they would take naps, I would sew and make clothes for everybody and the house, make things for the house. And I came from the old school of marriage too, that when your husband comes home from work, he ought to at least smell dinner cooking, even if it's not ready. So, but I've since lost that. The longer I've been married, I've kind of lost that. And he is an excellent cook. And he could, as a matter of fact, when we had the first baby, he made the first formula and the first bottle for the first baby. Because the doctor told me to go home and stay in the bed for 2 weeks. And I did just that. So the washing and the cooking and the house, all of that stuff. And he is one of 10 children. So
Oh,
he was
wow.
real familiar with doing all those things. So he stepped in and he did those things. And my mother, when we had the first baby, she would come to my house and help me. And then after I went back to work with him and she kept him, when I would go to pick him up from her house after work, she would have fixed my dinner. And all I had to do was pack it up and take it home.
Really?
Because she said, "Baby, I know you're tired, and maybe this will help." And I said, "Oh yes." So, but I've been blessed. My husband can do all those kinds of things.
What about any hobbies? Did you have any hobbies back then? Any things that you like to do with friends or alone or when the babies were asleep besides sewing?
Sewing was the major thing because I sewed for each family member and the house. And I would stay up, for example, if I wanted Rebecca to have a new dress for church on Sunday, I would stay up all night Saturday night, 2, 3, 4 o'clock, and make her a new dress for church that morning. And when we were up here the first time, I made my husband a walking suit and a long robe, and I made shirts and things for the boys. So that was my major. And then before we moved up here, two of my sister-in-laws and one of my dearest friends and I were all sewing. So we would have conversations and we took sewing classes together. My sister-in-law and I took a drape making class together so I could make matching drapes for my child's room. So I had lots of companionship and friendship during, when we lived there. But when we lived away from home, uh, my husband knew that sewing was very important to me. And if he were home, or if it were Saturday and I could get more done, he said, "Okay, just get them ready and they can go with me and they can spend the day." And he would take them with him to his office on campus or to the basketball court or whatever. And he even started taking Becky when she could walk around and talk enough to get her knees bent. And I said, "But I have to comb her hair." He said, "Put a cap on her, put a hat on her, we're ready to go." So I bought Becky lots of little caps and hats to match clothes. So he's been a good support person in terms of taking care of family. And
Wow.
even when he was in graduate school, he would come home at the end of the day, maybe 5:30, 5 o'clock, and he would have dinner with us and play with the kids. And then about 7, he would let me know he had to go back to his office to get some studying done or some work done. And he's sort of been operating like that for a long time.
Thank you so much for sharing that. What about some of the big decisions around the house? Um, I don't know, like buying a new appliance back then. Do you remember any of those experiences?
Oh, yeah. We had to buy things through the years. I was glad for him to make the decision. I had enough decisions I was making every day. And but of course we would go to the store and he'd say, okay, which one of these do you like? And I would point out features that I liked about. And I think most of the time we agreed on what to buy. But if we didn't, and sometimes I would say, I don't want to go to the store. I've got this to do, this to do. I trust your judgment. And I know you want us to have something nice.
So was it easy for you to go to the store and purchase something big for the house, or you needed to be with your husband?
We did it together. I would go out and find something sometimes. I'd go out and find if it were new furniture or even an appliance. Sometimes I would be the gopher. I would go and see at a couple of stores what would work in our home and how I felt about it. And most of the time when the purchase was made, I was with him because I would go back just to tell him even more about why I liked a particular thing. And but he, I don't think I've ever really had any difficulty with him making the final selection if that were the case.
But
Because
did
we have similar tastes and things. So
but did you feel like the store was not going to be responsive just to you being alone, or they were being more responsive the minute they saw you were having your husband with you?
oh, there were times when I knew they were more responsive. Because sometimes I would say, babe, you're gonna have to go back with me because I could tell by the way the clerk was acting. I don't want to deal with him because he doesn't seem to realize who I am. And he said, okay, well, we'll go back together after dinner or something like that. But yeah, he's been a very supportive guy. And sometimes, depending on what the object is, I didn't care what it looked like. I just wanted to do what it was supposed to do.
Oh,
So yeah, but no, I've been treated really well in terms of seeking my opinion and uh, being a part of major decisions. Even in buying of our homes, uh, I would say, okay, so we have to be moving. So what are we doing? He said, why don't you go out and find something you like, and then come and let me know, and we'll go together. So we've even done things like that.
so how was the process of buying a house? Do you remember when did you buy your first house?
Oh yeah, I was pregnant with the first child, and I had told him what kind of house I wanted. I wanted a ranch style house. I wanted more than one bathroom, things like that, number of bedrooms. And so we moved into a house because we couldn't find that, and he was trying to get me settled before I had the baby. And we moved into this house. It was a nice brick house, but it was in a neighborhood where there were no children, mostly people, elderly people. They could have been 30 and they were elderly to me. All right. So so we went looking. He said, well, babe, just find one. And the day that we found the house that was perfect, according to what I asked for, he said, okay, now we have to go sign the papers. I said, I can't do that. He said, but if you don't sign the papers, babe, we can't get the house. I said, I can't do it. I just cannot do it. I cannot put my name on that much money. I cannot do it. And if they won't sell it to you, I don't know what we're going to do. So you'd have to know my husband. He said, okay, well, why don't we just go on back home then? Where we were staying at that time. He said, well, let's just go on back home. I said, well, what about the house? He said, babe, we can't get the house if we both don't sign. If you don't want to sign, then we don't get the house. So let's go back home. I said, okay. So then I signed the paper.
So why you felt that you didn't want to sign the papers?
Because it was more money than I ever signed my name to in my life. And I'm thinking, and at the time I was pregnant with the first baby. And we had already decided that he was born in September, that I would stay home that first year. So I'm thinking, I'm going to stay home. We'll go buy a house. And you want me to sign my name to this much money? It just fear. Yeah. I've had to walk through some things like that in my life.
So your name at the time was in the mortgage, but also in the property of the house?
That was one and the same, pretty much, back then. Yeah. Oh, yeah. My name has been on every house we bought.
And do you remember how was the process of going to the bank and asking for the money? Was it easy? Was it hard? Were they asking for a lot of documents like they do now?
They were asking for a number of documents, uh, but I have a husband who believes that he can do whatever is necessary to be done. And if this is what you said we need to have, he will get all of that information and bring it and put it on the desk in front of them to let them know, okay, we've gotten what you asked us for. Now we're ready to do what we came to do. So, and he's 6'5". I think that might have convinced him sometimes. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
He's always had a lot of confidence and he's very self-assured. And he believes that uh, if there's something you want to do, if you go about the process, you should be able to do that and get it done. So I've gotten deeper confidence in all those things through the years, because I wasn't interested in getting a master's or a doctorate degree. I had my undergrad and I was teaching high school, and that's all I wanted to do. And he would tell me, and I became his editor and his typist because I was a business ed teacher. And he would tell me constantly, "You're so smart. You should go back and get your master's." I said, "Oh no, I've got 3 children, and I don't have time, and that kind of thing." So when I did that, my father was living with us. My mom had died in Virginia, and so we invited him to live with us. I think he lived with us about 3 years. And he would sit, and he was retired, of course. He was in his 70s. He would sit in his bedroom, which was on the front of our house, looking out the window, waiting for the school bus for Becky to come home and for the boys to walk up from the school that was near the house. So I had that kind of support as well. So when I allowed Edgar to talk me into going to graduate school, it was an hour and a half drive from Raleigh to Greensboro because I went to A&T in Greensboro and got my master's. But that was an hour and a half drive. How am I going to get there? But I don't drive long distances. He said, "You'll drive." I said, "Oh, no, no." And sure enough, I drove. And then he said, "I think you should take Becky with you." I said, "I can't take her." She was going into the 6th grade. And we would get up 4 o'clock in the morning, get ready, and we would go by Hardee's and get breakfast. She would get my food set up and her food. She would eat and she would go to sleep. And then I would drive to Greensboro, North Carolina every day. And I could not believe I did that. So that's how that came about.
That is great. So, Dr. Farmer, I have already made you this question when we closed our interview the last time. What
Okay.
makes you most proud of your younger self? What about of not that younger self? What makes you most proud now of your recent life?
The fact that I stepped into those areas of encouragement from my husband and my family. And because I thought, no, and I had made things so much harder in my head than they were. And even when I did my dissertation, I thought, oh Lord, I can't do that. Can't do research and do all. He said, "But you can." And I said, "How am I going to do that?" And he said, "Write about what you know and what you work in." And that's what I did. I was an assistant principal of an elementary school and the administrative director of the after school program at that school. He said, "Write about your job. Do your research on your job." I said, well, I could do that. And he knew me, he knows me really well. So he figured out a way to show me through life experiences and what I was doing, even helping him in the writing of his papers and the editing of his papers. He did a paper one time when he was in graduate school up here, and I edited it and then I typed it. And when the professor gave it back to him, the professor told him the typist ought to get the A for this paper. Okay, so so all of those little pieces of confidence, and then other people would say, Barbara, you could. When I got my master's, uh, my supervising professor came over to the school where I was doing my internship. And Edgar had been talking to me about looking into getting a doctorate. I said, no, babe, we have 3 children. You need me to go back to work. I can't stand it anymore. So my advising professor said to me as he was leaving, observing him, he said, you should get your doctorate. I said, what do you mean? I just want to do this so I can be an administrator. He said, well, if you don't get a doctorate, the people that you're going to be working for, you're going to realize you're just as smart or smarter than they are. And then you're going to be mad that you don't have a degree to go past them. I said, I can't talk to you right now. I walked away from him. I said, I can't talk to you. And I made the mistake of telling that to Edgar. He said, man, I've been telling you, you should do it. And I said, oh. So Edgar convinced me to go see the department chair of education at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And it was a wonderful, and he went with me. It was a wonderful interview. And then he set up for me to go to lunch with the guru of educational leadership, who was a professor at Carolina. And at that luncheon, I thought, oh my God, I can't believe I'm sitting. I just thought I can't breathe. I can't eat this food. I just sort of sit here quietly. And as we were ending the conversation, now I'm not a cursing woman, but I'm going to tell you what he said to me. He said, what in the hell will it take for us to convince you to come to Chapel Hill? I said, I'm coming. I'll come. And that's what I did. And it ended, and I had to drive an hour and 15 minutes to get to Chapel Hill at night. And the Greensboro. I thought, what am I doing? And then through all of that, though, the underlying factor was I've been a Christian ever since I was a little girl. I have been walking with the Lord all my life, basically. And like we said about some of the children at our church, sometimes, you begin to think you were born on a pew or something because you've been there so much. And in my church, they started calling me into leadership roles. And if the announcements needed to be made, or somebody going to sing a solo in the choir, or if we were going to the Baptist Union Youth Conference, they would send me. And I got to go to the March on Washington because of my activity in my church. That was a part of the group that went there. So some foundation had been put in me. I just hadn't made the connection. I thought they did this because they loved me. Nobody at Chapel Hill loves me. Nobody, he loves me, except Edgar. And I thought, so then when I took a class, I realized that my life's work experience was what the class was all about. And people were sharing things from work, and I'm thinking, I do that. I know what that is. So then I started raising my hand and realizing I actually had something very convincingly to share. And then professors started calling me for stuff. Well, Bob, what do you think? And I'm thinking, could you call on somebody else? But they at Chapel Hill and at A&T, and I thought, oh Lord. And all through those times, my confidence built, and I could hear myself. And I realized you do have something to share. There was a female professor at Chapel Hill, and one of my former co-workers, who was a Black female, had gone there to get her doctorate. And she said, when she found out I was now there, she said, don't take Dr. So-and-so because she doesn't like Black women. I thought, oh, Lord, here we go. So when I was in this lady's class, so I went home and I told Edgar that. Edgar said, the person who told you that, she doesn't get along well with anybody, Black or white. You go in there and you'll see that the lady is all right with you because of who you are. I thought, oh, no. So when I started the professor's class, I realized I had something to contribute in there, and she would call on me all the time. Well, Bob, what do you think? I thought, okay, I I work every day. I know. Well, I didn't. I stopped working after the first year. I said, but do have something to say about this. And their confidence in me began to. And then one day I decided if they let me in here, they got to let me out. So I figured they have to give me a degree. I'm still here. So that's, but through the years, my confidence and my sense of self and seeing myself in some of the roles that people have assumed I was automatically qualified for, I thought, you want me to do what? And when I was asked to be the first Black principal in State College, I thought, oh my goodness, I have to go home. I have to go home and tell Edgar what's going on. And his response has been, man, I already told you so. I've been telling you how smart you are. I've been telling you can do all that stuff. Now you're going to do it. I said, oh. And my children were very supportive and did the things they needed to do for me to get my homework done. And their daddy, whatever they had to do, Becky took Edgar to cheerleading practice or dance practice or went to the boys' basketball games. And when I could go, I went. And he had a habit of saying Saturday morning, I'm taking the children with me and we'll be gone all day so you can have the house to yourself. I said, great. I said, what about Becky? I said, I need to comb her hair. He said, no, get her a cap, get her hat or a cap. Because I could put a little outfit on. But there's a thing about Black mamas and how they want little Black girls' hair to look. He said, man, next time you go shopping, just get her some caps and match her clothes. That's what I did. So on those occasions when he would take the kids with him, Becky was going right along. And they had started selling programs at the NC State game. And Becky wanted to go too. I said, Becky wants to go. He said, put her clothes on, put a cap on, and she can go. So she was out there helping them sell programs. And she was like maybe 4 or 5 years old, and having a good time with her dad and her brothers. But Edgar has always been an active parent, even today.
After all these trips that we took down memory lane, how does the future look like for Dr. Farmer?
Woo. I have reached a point where I think I do believe I can do most anything. And I can have an impact most anywhere. I have reached a point, though, where my body said, slow down and sit down for a while. And that's what I've been doing. And the world hasn't stopped because I'm not out there. Things are still going on. And I pick and choose in a different way where I put my energy and my time. Because I know how important it is, even with my doctor's appointments. Like when I said my body doesn't do anything before noon that I don't want it to do or that it can do. And I said, okay, no problem. So my appointments are even 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the afternoon because that's when I'm geared up and I'm stronger. So I've learned through this situation to respond to what I feel in my body, in my head, in my mind, in my heart.
Well, let me tell you, Dr. Farmer, I really appreciate you taking this time with us. And I truly believe that sharing your story will impact younger generations. And it will help with the ongoing discussion about women and their experiences. And I really appreciate your time and being here. Is there anything that you would like to add?
One of the things I do still put energy in is a ministry to young women and older women, but particularly to young women. I've had them call me. I need to come and talk to you. Such and such a thing is happening. I need you to help me. I need you to help me through this. And I used to do a lot of presentations with female groups. And my beginning story was, it took me 25 years to get pretty. And I'm not giving it up. And I tell them, I said, when I was a little girl, I wasn't considered on the pretty list because of skin color. I was skinny. I mean, all those kinds of crazy things that people use to dissuade you and try to stop your progress. I said, but my mother always made me feel pretty. She always dressed me up in pretty clothes. And I think she realized that in pretty clothes, people would have to say, oh, you really look pretty. Then I said, so that was a bonus. And then when I started wearing makeup, I thought, that's pretty good. And I had two sisters who were beauticians, and they would do my hair like every 2 weeks so that I would always have a nice, fresh hairdo. And I said, one day I was looking in the mirror and I said, you look pretty good. And then I said, well, if I look good, that means I'm good looking. I said, and when I got to good looking, I decided, shucks, I'm going all the way to pretty. So I decided then to be pretty. And I let them know you can be whatever you choose to be if you want to put the thought and the heart and the work into it. So I've had fun on that trail for a long time. And even when I taught high school, and even at Kent State when I was working there as a teacher, the young ladies would find me. I need you. Such a thing is happening. I don't feel real good about myself right now. One time I had a student, female student at Pitt State, and they were having recruiters come in. And I know as a business teacher and a business professional, you have to look a certain way if you want to be pulled in for interviews and talked to. And she was so excited to be there that day. She came by my office and I said, where's your jacket? She said, I don't have a jacket. She had on blue pants and a light blue blouse. I said, well, what are you wearing to the interviews? She said, what I have on. I said, okay. I said, tell you what, meet me in front of the building tomorrow morning. That was Friday and Saturday. I said, because we're going to the mall. I took her to Macy's. I bought her a navy blue suit and offered to buy her a blouse. She said, no, I have a blouse. I said, okay, do you need shoes? I don't know if I bought the shoes. I don't think I bought a shoe. But, and she started wearing that when we had open house for recruiters. Because that's what the other kids had on. The white kids had on the girls had on the blue suits or the black suits. And I thought, she can't compete with them. And smart as a whip. But the first impression of what they see when you walk toward them, that's, oh no, but we're not losing any jobs because you don't have a suit. And my husband and I, through the years, even teaching high school, we used to dress kids for the prom or certain events because we wanted them to represent like the other kids did. So that's still my mission. And I have young married women in my church who come, I need you to help me. I need you to tell me what to do about this. And I would just listen, and I would give them some things to think about and encourage them. And so that's been a big part of my life. And my husband and I do couples ministry. So all of that. So we're still doing those things.
Awesome. So as we close our interview, Dr. Farmer, I would like to thank you for sharing your story with me and our audience. It was an honor to hear your story, and I'm excited about the impact that it will have. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for selecting me.